Hi, and welcome to another episode of the Thoughtful Talent Show. I'm Jen Werner of Jen Werner Coaching.
And I'm Chad Ahern of Talent Teams Consulting. And
And
today we have two wonderful guests back with us. I have the honor of reintroducing one of them. Amy Shuman is back with us for the fans of the show. She was on for our focus episode. Amy is a professional development director and coach within higher education. She is a Gallup certified strengths coach, as all of us are, and holds a professional certified coach certification with ICF, the International Coaching Federation. She holds a master's degree in leadership and is passionate about empowering people to create a positive workplace culture. Welcome back, Amy.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
yeah,
Yes.
welcome back, Amy. And I'm so excited to welcome back Samantha Berg. She is returning to us. You may recognize her from our competition episode. Sam is currently the Chief Human Officer at Choice Bank, a mid-sized Midwest bank. She previously served as an internal executive coach, using her Gallup certification to bring CliftonStrengths to all new ventures and practices. She resides in Grand Forks, North Dakota. And on a personal note, back in 2017, I got to actually meet Sam in real life, where we trained for our coaching certifications together. So welcome back, Sam.
Thank you for having me. And Amy, I do have to say it, focus has always been one of my theme envy themes. It's just something that I wish I had that I don't. So I'm a little jealous.
I love it. So today, as we said, we're going to talk about the CliftonStrengths talent theme of significance. And before we read the definition, the quick definition from Gallup, let's find out where this falls for you. Amy, for you, where is this?
Significance is my number 4.
Great. And Sam, for you?
4 as well.
Oh, I love it. So we have the experts here to talk with you about significance theme. And before we do, Chad, can you read for us the short definition from Gallup?
Sure. So I will do that in just a second. I do have to say, though, I'm thrilled that they both have it at 4 because it is my number 25. So this is going to be another episode where I learn a lot and may not have as much to maybe contribute to the understanding, but I'm thrilled to learn today. So.
No, I'm right there with you at 16. So yeah, it's good we have them here with us.
Awesome. All right. So to start us off, as we usually do on these episodes, the standard definition from Gallup around this theme reads as follows. People exceptionally talented in the significance theme want to be very important in the eyes of others. They're independent and want to be recognized.
And I'm remembering like that I think that was the original definition that Gallup had out for significance. And it brought out some strange connotations to the word significance in the dictionary definition. And we've talked about this with some of our other themes too, where the dictionary definition of the word does not really match the theme. And so what I remembered was the people exceptionally talented and significance theme want to make a big impact. So it's more about their independent prioritization of projects based on how much it might influence others and their organizations. Sam, I think you brought this up with me before when we talked about significance, is that like more selfish or self-serving kind of connotation that came along with it really does not blend well. So I wanted right now at the beginning of the show to like nip that in the bud, because we want to make sure that everybody understands the motivation really behind this theme. And this is not a me show. This is about the impact these ladies make in their life. So Chad, I'm going to let you take it from here.
Okay. Well, so with that as sort of a backdrop or maybe a starting point, I'm curious how this theme shows up. As Jen and I have noted, this is our 25 and 16 theme. And so we really don't experience it in a daily life situation. So Amy, I'd like to start with you and just ask sort of, how does this show up? Might other people recognize that you're either using it or leaning into it? We're going to get to the positive and negatives here in a second, but just generally, how does this show up?
Yeah, so I really like that description about impact. In fact, in my new top 5 report that I downloaded, the very first sentence in the short description for significance is you want to make a big impact. And so maybe that's been updated in the Gallup materials as well. For me, I think I'm always looking for, well, I have maximizer as well. So maybe there's a little bit of that of what's bigger, what's better, how do we do more? And it's not enough that the project is fun or personally exciting to me. It has to impact other people. And so maybe in that original description of being seen as important in the eyes of others, is what I'm doing impacting someone else's life in a positive way. That's what gives me energy to work harder and longer hours or volunteer for something that maybe is even bigger than I know how to do, but there's some pull in me. And I think it comes from that significance theme of, I think this needs to be done. The world needs this, or people need this, and I'm the one to do it. And for me, that's kind of how that theme feels inside of myself. There was something I read a while ago about if you're looking for a volunteer, significance often is the one to raise a hand. And it's a little bit different than just because it's helpful. It's because it's going to have an impact maybe on a large group of people or really change the way we do things. Those are the kind of things that excite me and that I'm always looking for.
Nice.
Amy, I just have to ask a quick question. Both you and I have higher education backgrounds. I have since left higher ed, but higher ed is often about committees. And I think you had jokingly said something when you and I met at the Gallup Summit about volunteering or being on committees, and the significance having sort of a role in where you often find yourself on a committee once you've joined it.
Yeah, I was joking about, I was telling a colleague, that point where I go from being on the committee to being in charge of the committee. It's happened to me more than twice, it's happened to me repeatedly. And I think it is that stepping into a leadership role. And I think that's a way that independence of significance shows up of, sometimes we like to take charge. It's a little different than command, but it's that kind of working on our own. Yeah, that happens to me a lot.
I just thought that was a really interesting sort of demonstration of this theme, and one that struck me when you and I last talked about it. Sam, I'd love to, I noticed you nodding along very much with a lot of what Amy was saying. I'm curious how this shows up. Both of you have commented already that this is theme number 4, but you have some other themes around, I'm assuming you have some other themes around your significance. How does this theme show up for you? Are there similar or slight variations based on what Amy has already shared?
Yeah, I think it is in relation to it being an influencing theme. And I think understanding that influencing themes interact with people, and that creating an impact is all about like a feedback loop. So wanting to do important work, but then needing the feedback and information to flow back in through other people to kind of keep this a continuous wheel, which is why I think sometimes it gets a little bit of a bad rep in wanting and receiving, feedback and praise and recognition, because I do think it's a really important and integral component. Because in order to assess if you're making that high impact, you need that feedback loop or proof or validation that it is in fact making that difference. So it lives within people, very different from my achiever. It's all about, checking that checklist off. That's very individual for me. Significance looks very different in its interaction with people. And then I believe Amy has it as well, but kind of in combination with competition, I think it just highlights and elevates that need for impact and importance. And sometimes that looks like that desire for being that important person in the room. But competition really kind of aids in that as well, to say that, yeah, we're out for number 1 and we're going to go and try to achieve that. So I think they really kind of bolster each other up for being front, being center stage, being the most important person, and making a giant impact along in that process.
You had shared with me before this like, I'm going to say comfort with the spotlight. And Amy, I think you've even said that when we talked about our focus in the focus theme. Do you believe that this comes from significance? This like comfort in the spotlight? Either of you?
I think so. It's funny because as a child, I was very shy. At least I thought of myself that way. And now I don't think of myself as shy necessarily, but even as a child, when I was really shy, there was something where I was more comfortable in front of a room than like being one of the people in it, if that makes sense. And so even as a really shy person, I feel like that significance was like this calling to me, that yeah, even as a young kid, and I got into theater, my bachelor's degree is in acting, so like a literal spotlight.
Oh yeah.
And even I remember, even when I was really shy, I still felt comfortable, which is like a top 3 fear, I feel like, around the world, like public speaking or being. And for me, there was something that it wasn't scary, it was exciting, but you know, there's like a little bit of that feeling of adrenaline or something, but it's not a fear. And so, yeah, I feel like it must be coming from if I had to pick one of my top 5 it's coming from, I would say significance for sure.
Yeah, Sam, you too?
I would agree as well. And however, I don't have any skill in acting. Mine came a little bit different in the form of sports and being an athlete. And I could, you know, Amy said it wasn't really nerves, it was an energy. And I perform so much better when I have an audience. So there's a feel that I get if I'm swinging a bat and I have people watching me versus just swinging a bat to perform on my own. I try much harder if I go out to a gym atmosphere than I do if I sit and try to work out at home. And so again, it's that interaction of humans that just, it gives you that spark, I believe.
And I found this so amazing, you know, because like for myself, I would say I'm the opposite, and I don't think of myself as an introvert at all. But you want to put me up on stage in front of a bunch of people, and I'm like, no thanks, I'm good back here. Like, let's do this one-on-one. So to hear you both talk about this, like being energized by the spotlight as opposed to fearing it, I just thought that was a really unique thing about the significance theme. And I'm very curious if this translates to others who have significance, maybe those who feel like they're a little more introverted, if they have that kind of energizing feeling that comes from significance as well. So just really cool insight that I wanted to make sure that we brought up today. Chad, can I go on to the next one?
Of course, take us to the next spot, because that's
okay.
I think that'll add some extra layers of flavor around this.
Yeah, absolutely. So we know that, like Chad said, they don't, these themes don't run in silos, but we want to, like, as much as we can, kind of parcel out the significance theme so that we can make sure that we're getting the right pieces to this. And we know that they work for great and good ways, and we can use them to be so successful, but we also know that the same thing can also either be raw or maybe underused, overused, and maybe we're using them in ways that, or have used them in ways that can trip us up. And I wanted to go to that place first, that like potential negative impact from your talent, because I think people who are just starting out, just learning about their talents, they get caught up in some of these behaviors that happen naturally, and I want them to know that it's okay. So I'm hoping you two could share with us like what some of those might have looked like for you in the past, or maybe even things that you still have you know, some struggles with around your significance theme. Sam, I'm going to start with you.
Yeah, the first one I would say, especially early on in my career, part of that feedback loop I spoke about was in that desire for that positive recognition that things were going well. And so I think it's really easy to take some constructive feedback or criticism and have that take you to a really horrible place, because that just validated that you hadn't been successful in that impact you were trying to make. And so knowing, however, that feedback loop has to include both, and likely you're going to get more information to make you even more impactful if you get that negative, or that constructive feedback is a component that is so important with this theme, but that doesn't feel like the natural thing you want. So it's almost that dopamine hit of things are going well, things are going wonderful, but that's not always the most beneficial to truly you using what this theme can do.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I appreciate that. Amy, how about for you?
Yeah, I think in like a raw or like basement state, it can look like, I don't know, sort of like an egotistical thing where it's about me. And sometimes there can be a spot there for me where I'm like, am I after the feeling of importance, or am I doing something actually important? And so even I can get kind of like tempted by something that, oh, well, they're going to give me a lot of praise for that, but do I see that it's actually aligned with my mission and goals, and is it the biggest impact I could have for the amount of time I'm going to contribute? And so I think most of where it really can tear me up is more internal than external. I mean, if I've read in my report, it says things like, watch out that you're not being real vulnerable because you might be really focused on the project. And that's true for me, for sure. But where it really can hurt me on that kind of edge side of the theme is feeling like being really hard on myself, that I didn't do enough, that I didn't have a big enough impact, that it wasn't as good as it should have been, and it was my fault. And so I have to kind of talk myself out of that. The other thing I've been, and sharing this with other people too, because it exists for other people in different ways, is not all impact can be seen and measured, and not all impact can be seen and measured the same way. Case in point, I had coached someone that I didn't think I did a particularly good job. Like, I don't think I was helping them. We're talking, and this happens. I coach many people, and then years later, like 2 years later, I want to say, they came up and shared, oh, that was so impactful. I keep the notes from that call and I look at them every day. And it was a reminder to me that I'm looking for that audience feedback, and not everyone's going to give it to me the same way. And that doesn't mean I didn't have an impact. But to your question about the downside of having that theme really high is it needs some external validation. And if you're not getting it, or the audience isn't giving it to you, you might still be helping them, but there's a pull to say, I'm just going to move on to a different audience where my talents are needed or appreciated or whatever. And that's sometimes a trap.
I'd like to ask a clarification. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
Jen.
No, go ahead.
I want to ask a clarification question around that, because I'm also seeing potential sort of flip side of, you get overpraised, or lip service or flattery, but the project itself might not be, to use your words, Amy, sort of as impactful as maybe you'd intended, or that it didn't have sort of the pop that you'd hoped for. I'm just wondering, I'd like both of you to answer this, and I'm going to leave it open to who goes first, but I'm just wondering, when people sort of over recognize you, what does that do internally for you when you then realize that maybe that's not having the impact, or that's maybe leading you in a direction that's not impactful? What does that dynamic look like? Because I know people that can be over flower, like, hey, you did a great job, everything's excellent, and you're thinking, well, it's C-level work, or how does that dynamic work with somebody within significant within somebody that has significance?
I can just say, for me, I don't think there is such thing as too much praise. A lot of my great friends have woo. I think not coincidentally. I love it. I love that energy. It actually leads to some of my most difficult things of when I have to say no, but I love that. I love people, and it's okay, even if it's frequent. And like, for me, there's no such thing as too much. However, I do feel a pull to, I don't know, impress the unimpressed. So both exist for me, but the hardest thing is if I have to say no to someone who's very complimentary and who's very because I don't want to let anyone down, and I like the praise. So for me, I don't really, I try not to factor it into where I'm spending my time and what I'm working on. But I don't think for me there's such thing as too much of positive comments. But Sam may feel differently.
Yeah.
I do a little bit, and I'm just trying to look at the other themes. I have deliberative at 10. I don't know if there's a little bit of individualization here as well, because I believe I've always been able to cut through very quickly the surface level praise and the impactful praise. So it's kind of funny because I want praise that's impactful. I don't want a good job. How was it impactful? What did I do? What was it about it? So oftentimes I'll go and seek that out. If I just get a generic one, I'll kind of force that they say why it was impactful. And so I do think that this also just is a very heightened, just as with other themes, it's very heightened in our mind. We know when we get it. We know when we give it, and we know the importance of giving it back because of how much we need it. So I know I spend a lot of my time giving that feedback back to people, because honestly, I don't know how they operate without it, because
Yes.
that's what I need. That's what pushes me forward. And there have been moments in time that I know I'm not going to need it. So I have to very strategically, even like visually and physically in my office, place things to keep me in the right direction, knowing that it's going to be silent for a long time. But I know that this is the mission. Now, Amy, you've got things like focus. You might not need those external things, but I need that to keep me on the mission, even if I'm not going to, knowing that I'm not going to get those things back.
Well, I'm saying yes because I used to joke, well, it's not really a joke, I guess, because it's true, that I'm fueled by compliments. Like that is the source of energy that is driving me. But I can keep a focus with my focus theme on projects, but I also have, like, you can't see it, one, because I'm using virtual background, two, because it's in front of the camera. I have a bulletin board of nice things people sent me, little cards or like, and I look at them every day. Yeah, I think I have that same stationery. And so I have a whole board of it. And I also look at that every day because it's that kind of, I need that kind of energy. And I know I'm not going to get every day in the mail a card. And that might be a lot, right? But that's so funny. I didn't link that to significance before, but I'm looking at my kind of affirmation board. And it's not personal affirmations. They're all from an audience. They're all from someone else, which is a little different than maybe how someone might do one of those boards with different themes.
But I don't keep those affirmations if they just say thank you.
No, these are all meaningful. Yeah.
Very meaningful. Yes. Yep.
I so love where we're going with this. And so I'm going to take us right to the positive side, because Sam, you already said it. Like when you want feedback, you need personalized, like what impact did I make? It needs to be like specific. So I heard you say when you give feedback, that's what you do. So I'm seeing already like that is one of the biggest positives to this significance theme and how it like makes you so impactful in other people's lives. So I'm hoping you both can like add on to that with what are the ways that this just has really like propelled you and made sure that you made that big impact in your lives, in others' lives with your significance theme. And because I'm already calling on you, Sam, I'm gonna make you go first.
Okay. Couple of things come to mind is one, just the fuel and energy that it pushes you to make a really big impact in the world. But then two, I would say we're also really good participants and audience members. And I've had presenters come to me and say, thank you. You don't know how nice it is to have somebody who's engaged with your presentation versus just sitting back. And I had no idea that this was something I did, but you naturally engage as if you're in a conversation with a presenter, just as you do when you're up on stage with the audience. So I do think it brings that perspective on who is on stage and engaging with that person and giving them that feedback. Even though it's not verbal, it's visual as to what that person is doing and how they're performing, as just one example. I think I'm underplaying the impact that significance can lead to, but that was just a small example as to, again, how it can be pulled out in regular, workday experiences.
Very cool. Amy, how about for you?
Yeah, I think for me, and I also have competition top 5. So they do work together in terms of like my own aspirations in my career. So there's been a lot of positives with risks I took, things I did that went beyond where I was at, like there's that same pull that I talked about as a kid, like pulling me up to the front of the room, still there today. And so I feel like it's kind of like pulled me. My theme that I wish was higher on my own list is one of them is strategic. I'm not a particularly strategic person, but it's like the significance is like pulling me along a road and I don't really know where it's going, but it's had a lot of positive impacts. The thing now, like where I sit in my career now, I'm sort of like mid-career, I guess you'd say, is I really like helping other people kind of manifest and materialize their ideas. And I like being known as someone who can take something big and a little bit ambiguous and bring it to life. And I think significance is fueling that in a lot of ways. And focus, as Sam mentioned, focus is there too, helping make sure it gets done. But for me, significance is like, oh, this is powerful. This is meaningful. I care enough about this and I'm not gonna, it's on my brain now. Like I want to be part of it. I think on a group, one thing I can do is help other people understand impact, which, in different surveys about workplace engagement and like people want to know what is the impact of their job? What is the impact of their work? I'm thinking about that all the time. And so that's another place where me as like my significance might help a team is reminding them, or like to Sam, I try to get better at the complimenting of people. I don't know. I used to say it was because I have woo is like 24. I'm not always like doing that, but I'm trying to point out the meaning behind the work. And that is a little bit more natural to me, though I do think those positive comments are so good. And I try and say them out loud more.
Oh, and I should say that I also have woo really low, and so my comments definitely are not always positive, but it is a true feedback loop.
Oh, yeah, you said feedback, right?
Yeah,
Sure.
as to the impact.
My maximizer likes to give unsolicited feedback all the time.
Yes, and I do, similar to maximizer, that I think often plays a role is significance. Is a little bit of a sorting theme to give us direction, like you said. We don't entirely know where it's taking us. It's just a feel that it naturally takes us to the most impactful work. So it's not as maybe methodical to get there as the strategic path would follow. But it pushes us in that direction pretty naturally. So there may be a component through the maturity growth of just being able to listen and being a little comfortable to go along the ride of where that takes you versus kind of a planned strategic path, so to speak.
And I know, Sam, you and I had met once before and we had talked about and letting go if it's not having the impact, like significance. Maybe that's different than how focus can really lock in. Significance is like, well, we're going to go where the impact like we're going to go where the thing is taking us, and it's not locked in. And that also means if it's not working, we can move on to something else.
Nice.
I want to pick up a thread here that I'm hearing, and I'm just wondering if one or both of you can speak to this. You've talked about sort of sensing or feeling. And, when I start hearing those words, I start thinking about themes like empathy that have that sort of sixth sense around what's going on. You've talked about being up on stage and kind of going with the flow in certain points. Does this significance theme have sort of a group level empathy facet to it or ability? Just in terms of like kind of going with where your audience needs to be or where they need to feel that impact. I'm trying to, my analytical is hearing certain words and some patterns here, and I'm just, if I'm reaching or if I'm grasping at straws, please tell me. But I was just think it's something that I've heard come up with other people with significance. And since you live with it much more than I do, I'm just wondering if that is part of this theme, or if I'm maybe attributing it incorrectly. Either one of you
Yeah,
want to take that one? I don't know. I'm not sure if I've even clarified the question succinctly enough, but I'm putting it on the table and see if one or both of you want to react to that.
I think you are accurate, Chad, in that it is a sense, so to speak, of your audience, and your audience is everyone. Whether it's a conversation individually of somebody that jumps in my office, or when I'm up on stage presenting something. Where I would say that I'm not successful in, though, however, is maybe where they're at emotionally. I can tell at as to what I'm delivering, as if they're getting it and processing it and engaged with it.
Okay.
But I know I don't have the intuition that individuals with empathy, it's really, really low, that individuals with empathy have, that I've had to reach out to them for additional insight into my audience. And nor do I take on their emotions, which I think is common with individuals with empathy. I can very much clearly make a distinction of their emotions and my emotions, and I don't follow along that path.
Yeah.
I agree. I also have empathy at the bottom of my list. And yet I've said something similar like to this before, Chad. And so as you were speaking, I thought, when I'm facilitating and I'm up in even if I'm a participant, but especially if I'm the facilitator, I notice every eye movement, every time someone looks at their phone, every comment, every little glance people make to each other. I'm listening for every word. Like I'm like hyper sensing the audience. And so even with empathy being a lower talent for me, I don't take on the feeling of it, but I'm adjusting all the time to what's happening in the room, and I'm bringing the energy up if I feel, or I'm taking a break, or I'm watching. It's sort of like I'm also a hyper vigilant person, so I don't know how those are tied together, but I can look at a group and I can know how they're doing. I heard someone once to me say that empathy people can have their eyes closed and still feel the energy. I can't I need a cue.
Got it. Okay. That's an awesome delineation between the two. And I was not thinking so much the full on empathy. I mean, we know these themes are very distinct. The kind of the walls and definitions between them are pretty solid. So I knew that we weren't talking about empathy specifically, but that's sensing. And I really appreciate the nuance that you gave there of you're watching, you're sensing the environment, but you're not taking on the emotion. But that hyper vigilance, I think, is something I'm going to really take away from this conversation.
I have an example that looks a lot like, because I got the comment, it was like empathy. So it was a multi-day class. I noticed somebody was like getting up a lot, sniffling. It was like cold season, right? And so I'm like, okay, they keep getting pulled away because they don't have any. So the next day I made a whole table, Kleenex and vitamin thing, packet thing, like a whole thing, hand sanitizer. And I just set it up. And the person came up and said, oh, you're so empathetic. You're so caring. And so it looked that way. And I did care, but it was coming from, how do I make this a better experience for everybody and keep them engaged in the class? So I was noticing the behaviors. I made an adjustment, and it kind of balanced out where someone else, it might have been the same behavior stemming from empathy.
Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you. I didn't mean to take us down that so long, but I'd heard this sort of thread of sensing and being aware and the impact.
Yeah.
And
well, with me, I have communication number one. So as soon as I hear a word, I'm going to go on a trail, but I'll let you bring us back.
Well, it's all those influencing themes, right? Like it is that like constantly picking up cues, like regardless of what theme that is, we are with my activator, I could say and I also have maximizer in my top 10, but so I could say that that is the place where we're picking up those cues from others and looking for that, the impact that we're making.
Excellent.
Chad, back to you.
So, all right. So you've done a wonderful job describing this theme sort of on its own. You've brought in a couple maybe themed comparisons. I wanted think a little bit more about some of the theme dynamics. And given that as of this recording, Gallup has just released the new top 5 report. So some of this information is now available to a lot of people. But I'm just wondering, for the two of you, are there particular themes that you find pairing, that you consistently pair with your significance to make it even better, to maybe heighten that awareness or bring more impact? I was just wondering, are there themes that you tend to go to that maybe people, as they look at their new top 5 report, can be like, oh yeah, this is how Sam or this is how Amy is using it. Maybe I can tag along with them, or maybe I need to find my own definition. I'm just wondering if there are themes that you find that really bring more impact through that significance. And Amy, I'd like to go with you first on this one.
Sure. Yes, I think all of them can complement, enhance significance. Like if I picked one, I don't know. I could see how all of them do. With significance, I think maximizer comes to mind, because it's also about, bigger and better, and how do we enhance things. Though I have to throw focus in there too, because for me, focus is the agent that makes sure like things get completed. So I think all 3 of those, and that's my 3, 4, and 5, really work together. And I'm going to throw in my number 7, which may be cheating, I don't know. But I have futuristic number 7, and significance and futuristic. I am thinking, I don't know if this is like other people or not. I said it one time in a room and everyone was like, that's not like all of us. I am constantly thinking about legacy, like almost every single day. And it's just a normal part of and so my futuristic and significance is not just about impact right now, today in the class. Did you like the class? I hope so. But I want 10 years from now, 20 years from now, when you retire from the organization, saying that class changed the trajectory of my career. Like that's what I'm thinking all the time. So futuristic is helping me see what the impact could be, and significance is that kind of catalyst, I guess, of like, what are we going to do now that's going to lead to the future that we want?
Nice. That's a fantastic pairing. I appreciate how you just detailed that. Sam, what about you? What themes do you tend to partner up with your significance to get even more on it?
Well, Amy, your correlation to futuristic is fascinating, because I too have that. I think it's 7 or 8. And I frequently, and it's like, it's on a weekly basis, because I think especially in HR and most roles have this, you really get bogged down by some tasks that are not impactful in life. And so especially recently, I look to the future in retirement, and I say, when I look back in these moments, am I going to be proud at the impact and the work that I did? So I do this kind of jump back and forth pretty frequently to keep me knowing that my impact is there. And so that, I think, is a really strong pairing. I would say the other one that I pair with almost everything I do is command at number 6, because command commands itself pairing along every other theme. And so there's assurance in my presentation. There's again, with deliberative, kind of communicating certain things to make the most impact, and kind of that explosion I've maybe referenced before. And so it just heightens, and there's a flip side to it too, for sure, but it does heighten the importance, and it heightens the weight of the impact and message I'm trying to deliver.
Yeah, I think you've shared with me before too, like having that command and your significance together. When you give recognition, people believe you. And I thought that was so powerful. And I'm like, oh, she's right. But I think it's like it's like your way of like, you're building trust, right? Because when people get recognition from you or hear something from you, they can trust it, they can believe it because you're not just like lip service. It's not just, hey, I think you did a great job today. You're like, I think you did a great job today because, and like give them like the rock hard data behind it. That really truly makes that so much more impactful for them.
Yeah, and one thing that I think Command does for me is it loves conflict, and it pushes me through, like, conflict is the way through anything. And Significance knows the impact of what that conflict can push you all through to. So I think that pairing also works nicely for me, just to, I mean, if anybody knows anything about me, I push right through it and bring up the elephants in the room. And if anybody is going to speak about it, it's going to be me. But I know that the impact for the team will be so much greater in the long run.
So good. It falls right into our Command episode, Chad, that we had just a few weeks ago. And they told us the same thing. They're not worried about bringing up that elephant because they know the greatness that will come afterwards. But that's like a completely different place that's coming from than the motivation of your significance. So I love that you just clarified that for us. Thank you. I think we were going to go into some unique pairings. And I think I brought this up at the very beginning about the extroverted type of like look that significance has. And I don't know if either of you or any of you, actually, let's put it all out to the three of you. If you've coached anyone in the past that maybe has more of a like quiet or introverted type of significance, have you seen this before? Sam, you're nodding.
Yes, I have coached a couple people. We actually, this theme is pretty common in our organization. For how rare it is interesting. And I have coached a number of individuals who are a little bit quieter. And it's been interesting because many of them have wanted to get really good at the presenting and being in the spotlight. So there was a desire for it, but there may have been some other things that just didn't lead them to that place. But the consistent component was the need for the feedback, that ability to operate off of, the information that other people were getting from you. So where people really started to have a difficult time operating professionally if they didn't have that regular feedback coming to them.
Nice. Amy, have you noticed any unique pairings that it looks different?
Yeah, I'm trying to think. I don't know that I've coached very many people with significance top 5. I can think of at least one that comes to mind, and I experience this person as more introverted, though I don't know how they would describe themselves. So I don't know. I think sometimes I remember the person I'm thinking about, there was a frustration in not being able to have the impact they wanted. But I don't know how introversion and extroversion play into that. But certainly I think it's possible that, if you have a different combination of strengths, significance is just one of them, that it may not be the one that you're leading with or pulling with, or even that like impact doesn't have to always be so visible, though the way Gallup describes it, there are some components that I would think leans that way, like the not being afraid to be out, being seen, being heard. Though I don't know, now I'm just kind of spinning, so the answer is I don't know, but I don't see it that much. And I'm interested that Sam's organization has a lot of significance top 5. I haven't met a ton.
No, me either. Chad, do you have any experiences?
Yeah, well, so it's interesting. I wasn't going to go so much with the introversion extroversion sort of.
Sorry. Yeah, I got us that way, didn't I? Sorry.
No, it's kind of right, but it got me thinking. I think I forget if it was on our last episode with you, Sam. You talked about sort of the strategic thinking pairing with some of these influencing themes, and that might lead to a little bit more of the quietness. What I'm actually thinking about is somebody that I coached with significance, and then he had a number of executing themes. And so what it ended up looking like was he had to be the guy to do things. So particularly this is in sort of a maintenance construction environment. And so he felt like he had to do all the repairs. but he has a team of, if it was 15 or 20 people that reported to him, but he constantly felt like he had to be out in the community doing it, making sure it was done right. And then his sort of feedback was, hey, it's fixed. The customer or the client or the resident was now happy. Okay. But there's much more of an executing side to it, with the significance of he had to be the person. He couldn't let this go off to somebody else. He had to be the one to have an impact. And we did some coaching around that. And he's in a much better place right now, and he still uses wonderful contribution of significance and his other executing themes. But it is sort of a different flavor compared to what we've said, because he's never really sought out, say, a spotlight or a stage, or been, in a sort of a presentation kind of mode. He's very much more in sort of an executing environment. So that would be my only sort of add to this conversation of, it is helpful to think about, okay, what sort of environment are you in and what is going to be the most helpful. I mean, the two of you are beautifully in presentation, HR and the workforce development stuff that you do, Amy, within Ed. That's very much front and center, being on a stage, presenting knowledge, all that. And that's the difference here, is that we're talking about executing.
Yeah, and I think it can, oh, go ahead, Amy.
Oh, I was just gonna say, I like the tie into that. I would call it like being a subject matter expert. And for myself, I spent 10 years in human resources in a very behind the scenes capacity. And I really valued being a subject matter expert who is making things happen behind the scenes. Ultimately, for me, through strengths, I found that I would be more satisfied being more visible. But for many years, I would have described myself the same way, that I knew I was having an impact, but ultimately the pulled me out of the behind the scenes. Sam?
Nice.
Yeah, and I think you can be a little bit of both. Like in the Myers-Briggs, for example, like I'm right down the middle. So an omnivert, so to speak. And so, but I have things like Relator at number 5, that I like the stage, but I really like to be done with the stage when that time has passed. So I do think it's dependent on some of those other themes you have around it.
Yeah, thanks.
I want to do a real quick popcorn question for the three of you. And that is, and we've done this in other episodes, real quick, an image or maybe a pop culture reference that comes to mind for you when you think about significance. I'm just going to keep this really short, because I know we've already had you for a wonderful amount of time, and I know we've got a couple other questions to get to. So real quick, popcorn answer, Amy, what image comes to mind for you?
Well, we talk about stage and things. I think of somebody winning some kind of big visible award, like going up, receiving the statue, like a lifetime achievement. So impact over time, visible, getting the recognition. That would be kind of my image that I would put for significance.
Nice. Sam?
Mine would be the atomic bomb explosion cloud. And that probably has to do with my, command and those type of things thrown alongside the significance, but it is about that impact and really wanting those explosions or light bulbs happening within your audience.
Nice.
Yeah,
it's a little extreme, but that's what it is.
It's a little extreme, maybe a little destructive, but we get the idea of the impact there. I love it. I love it. Jen, I'm going to bring you in on this one. Do you have an image that you tend to go to?
Yeah, I was thinking like the Nobel Prize. So it kind of goes along with that lifetime achievement. It's that like the big deal that happened that changed history or like the future for everyone. It's like that big impact. That's where I was going with it. What about you?
So it's really low for me, and I'm going to bring in my sports background. I thought of the song. It's called Center Field by John Fogerty. It's the put me in coach. I can play center field. So that's the one. Just based on what I know of the theme, it was that whole wanting to be out on the field doing something important.
And now we'll all be singing that in our heads the rest of the day. Thank you.
Nice. Jen, do you want to take us to our last question about sort of how we work with teams on this?
Yeah. So as we think about like how you have all worked with your significance in the past, and the ways that we can interact with those who have significance so that we can be like have them bring the best that they have to a team. So we're looking for like knowing your own personal significance. How would you help, team leaders or team or peers bring the best out of those that they know who have significance? And Amy, I'm gonna start with you.
Yeah, I think mine's kind of twofold. One is giving them things that are important that they can take ownership of, like really projects that they can lead, that have some impact and meaning, and letting them really take ownership. Because for me, I don't always like just being a member of a committee, as I kind of said earlier. So if you have somebody with that, it might be a good stretch for them too, depending where they're at. The second half is if you're the manager of someone with high significance, we talked a little bit about, just those kind of surface compliments don't quite do it. Like telling them the impact that they're having. And this is actually, my manager right now is so great at doing this. And I don't think he's doing it because I have significance, but it's a great pairing for me is reminding them of the impact they're having. So if you're managing someone with that, knowing they're going to want to know that, how is the work helping the greater organization? At least for me, that would be a second tip.
Great.
Awesome.
And Sam?
Yeah, I think silence is maybe one of the worst things you could do for someone with significance is just not connecting for a long time. You need that interaction. You need the feedback. And I think the feedback is more impactful when it's praise if that same person has also given you the other side, because that they're in it for your own development and for the impact that you could potentially bring. So, and it's hard as I work with leaders and managers all the time. They know these things, but they just are hesitant to tell that person, but knowing that that's truly the most important thing to provide to that person for their development and their growth, I think is number one for me. So the good, the bad, and the in between, not silence.
Great.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Well, this has been a power hour of knowledge, and I know normally I ask sort of give me your 2 or 3 key takeaways, but I think we just heard them. I think those are really great, and you've really packed this whole episode with a lot of knowledge for both Jen and I and our listeners to take away. So I want to thank you. I know both of you are very busy within your respective fields in your organizations, and so you've blessed us with an hour of your knowledge, your time, your expertise, your lived experience with this theme. I want to let you get back to doing what you need to do, and Jen and I can talk to our listeners about sort of how we want to wrap up. And but I just want to say thank you for your time. This has been fantastic and wonderful. My learner is all fired up now. So thank you very much for all the insights you've shared. Jen, is there anything you wanted to say before we let these 2 wonderful ladies get back to their usual work?
Yeah, just again, echoing Chad's thank you for being here, being vulnerable with us, sharing with us and our listeners about what the significance theme can look like and has looked like for you, and maybe having them understand theirs a little better so that they can do great, impactful things for the world too. So thank you both so much for being here.
Yeah, this was a treat, and great to meet Sam and get to hear some other significance comments that resonate, help me understand my own theme better, my own strength better, hearing you describe it. So thank you.
Excellent.
Agreed. Thank you all so much.
We'll let you go. We've got a few things we're going to talk to our listeners about, but we really appreciate your time, and we'll see you hopefully in some other future coach connection. All right.
Thank you.
Okay,
Wow.
So this was an excellent episode. We love Sam and Amy, and so I'm so glad they could be here with us. So again, like, we want to encourage you to please, check out our show notes. If you have questions for us, Chad, me, Sam, or Amy, you can find all of our contact information in our show notes. And Chad?
Yeah, so like she said, make sure you hit the subscribe, the like button, the bell to get notified when we drop future episodes. We want to keep letting you, our listeners, know about these awesome themes. And yeah, reach out. But for now, I'm going to say until next time, I'm Chad Aiden from Talent Teams Consulting, encouraging you to keep playing to your strengths.
And I'm Jen Werner of Jen Werner Coaching, encouraging you to be uniquely you.